Right, now, time to spice things up with a masterclass from this marvel here, Atul Kochhar. Now, this one was prompted by a question from John, who I believe is with us here. John, what was it you wanted to know?
Well, I like to use spices in my food, but I'd like some tips on how to make it more authentically Indian.
Ah, OK. Atul, before you kick off, Phil, do you use a lot of spicing in your recipes?
Very, very little at all, actually. I'm very aware there's a whole world of flavour pairings that I just don't know enough about.
I mean, I'm sure I speak for everybody when you open up your cupboard in the kitchen and you've got myriad jars of spices. How do you keep spices fresh?
First thing first, I would say the whole spices should be kept no more than a year.
Yeah, that's
I would
my
always
cupboard
say
gone. I just made some space.
Each and every spice has got an essential oil in its small berry. OK? And all we are trying to do is extract that oil into the cooking oil so that we can carry that flavour through into the dish.
And is it better to buy whole and to grind them yourself in a pestle?
I would say so. Keep a spice grinder or a coffee grinder and use it only for spices.
So what do you got going on here? A lot of onions, by the look of it.
So we sauté the onions till they are translucent to achieve sauces which are lighter in character, i.e. kormas.
And then the
Pretty much
darker
like that.
onions would be used for?
Like Rogan Josh and Vindaloo.
So this is good for John. So the first thing you need to do is just really sweat your onions and make sure you've got the right colour onions for the right sort of sauce that you're using. So then, once you've got your onions, the next stage, obviously, is your spices.
Yeah.
Do you then dry roast them? Do you throw them into oil whole? Do you put them in your coffee mill?
I will toast them lightly. So what toasting does, it brings the oil on the surface of the spice, and when you grind them, you get tenfold more flavour than normally you would get.
Do you dry roast your spices, John? Is that something you've done?
No, but I will do now.
Yeah, there you go. It's a nice hot pan.
And a little bit of cumin as well. If you want to be a purist, then you do it separately.
And how do you know it's done? Is it the crackle? Is it the smell?
Sometimes they crackle, and also the sense of smell, and also sense of sight, i.e. colour. So these are pretty dark
Starting
anyway.
to go, yeah.
Yeah.
OK.
OK, I'll stop this.
Right, coriander and cumin have gone in. So you get them down to a fine powder?
Yes, you want to reach that fine powder.
I want to know, if you had to have 5 spices in your ingredients cupboard, which 5 would you pick? Only 5, that's all I'm giving you.
Other than my wife, yeah?
Is she in the cupboard? Somebody call somebody.
Don't call my wife. Nobody talks.
Well, she can't get there. There's a phone in there. OK, I'm guessing you'll probably pick cumin?
I would say cumin, coriander, something like cardamom. I would keep turmeric, and I would keep a very mild red chilli powder.
OK. Now,
OK, so when the onions are at this stage...
So really sizzling. Like
really sizzling.
Yeah.
That's the time you would add spices, I would say, the powdered spices. Pinch of red chilli powder. Some turmeric powder. And also, when you're sauteing your onions, always add salt. What it does, it helps to draw the moisture out and helps to caramelize the onions. And at that stage, I can add my blend.
Because they've been cooked before, you just put them at the end.
Yeah. You can add all of it.
Oh, yes. That's the way to do it.
That's gone. And all you have to add to this is some tomatoes. Ginger garlic paste would go in. And your meat. And that's it.
How about that, John? You ready for that? Great. Amazing. Well done. If that's made your tongue tingle, take note. Varying the spice proportions is an authentic way of making different dishes. Have one dominant spice and then a cast of supporting spices. Just like Jerry in her Spice Girls heyday. Heighten flavours by toasting spices in a dry pan. Temperatures reach 500 degrees compared to 212 in a simmering sauce. Use your onion spice base as a launch pad for meat, fish or veg curry, adding water and tinned tomatoes or a splash of coconut cream. Anyone for chicken tikka masala? Welcome back to the show that's kind of like lunch for people with mortgages. I have 3 of Britain's finest chefs, all poised to answer some tough culinary questions. So, did anyone remember to bring a question with them? Any questions in... Oh, yes, you've done me proud, all of you. Hello, sir, what's your name?
Paolo.
What is your question for our marvellous chefs?
It's actually about chicken breasts. It's very easy to make them dry and tasteless, so I would like to know if you have any advice on how to make them taste good and juicy.
Right, Claude. You must be the arbiter of what is good and juicy, surely. If any man is.
I would like to think so. On the chicken breasts, I like poaching them before I roast them.
How long would you poach for?
You bring the stock to boil, you turn it off, you put your breast in it, and you leave it for 10 minutes.
OK.
You cook them in a broth, and after you give them a nice caramelization with some butter. So you get the skin very crispy, very quickly, and you get the breast very much.
That's a good tip. Right, any more questions? Hello. What's your question?
When I make curries at home, sometimes the sauce can be thin, and I was wondering, how do you make a thick curry like a restaurant curry?
We know who to go to for this one. Now, I think this partly may have been answered by the onions that we saw.
That's true. That's true. So most of the curries are thickened by onions. I often use 10% onion. So if a kilo of chicken is there, about 10%. So that gives me kind of thin curry. But if you want a thicker curry, then I would say step up and go about 20-25% onions. Saute them well, cook them well. And then you can use fresh tomatoes and you can add a tablespoon of tomato paste. That will also thicken the curry for you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Right, time for one more question. There we go. Hello, my love.
Hi.
What's your name?
Camellia.
Who's your question for, or what's your question, love?
To any one of the chefs, where does the inspiration or passion come from for your signature dishes?
Phil, passion.
I mean, for me, it's a completely seasonal thing. I just write a list of all the ingredients that are either just about to come in season or have just started. And that is, in itself, just a very simple and pure way of finding inspiration. And the best thing about cooking seasonally is that all those ingredients that are in season at any one time of year, they magically have a natural affinity with each other. You end up with wild salmon and asparagus and, you know, and woodcock and turnip. And it's really clever and it's really cool.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all of those who've asked questions. These days, it's so important to keep up with the latest trends. As I was just saying to my face yoga instructor, if it's ahead of the curve you're wanting, watch this. OK, gastronauts, strap yourselves in for the latest culinary forecast as we explore a movement in the fashion of food. This week, it's the best thing since sliced bread. Britain's newfound love for the artisan loaf. For consumers of food, like me, the buzzword du jour is traceability. Little wonder then that the big trend for a handmade loaf is very much on the rise. The E5 Bakehouse in East London is one of the UK's 886 bakeries that makes an honest crust. All natural ingredients without any artificial additives.
There's 3 ingredients: flour, water, salt, and that's it. Increasingly, people want to get something that they know is going to be good for you, that has less ingredients, less processes, and also has a face behind it. And people want that kind of personal relationship with the food that they're eating.
Chef Jacob Kennedy is fanatical about really good dough and has come to check out the mini baking revolution happening here.
There was a time when we all baked at home, and then we had a long period of industrialisation. Only now I think our eyes are open again to artisanal baking. Absolutely hypnotic. I love that. I want one. Industrial bread's all about speed and efficiency and making it cheap. This has got a lot of time and love poured into it, and is really what life's more about.
While industrial bread requires lots of yeast, bakeries like this one prefer the art of sourdough, the original way to create a natural yeast culture through its long fermenting process.
I think there's a great vibe here. It feels like a cultural hub, both for the people who work here and the customers, providing something quite important, a heart for the community.
Jacob's restaurant is celebrated for its honest regional Italian cuisine and prides itself on making all its own gelati, salami, pasta, and of course, bread.
Baking our own bread at Bocca is important to our customers, but is the lifeblood for my chefs. And having that chance to do something really with your hands, something so simple and so primal, is really important to everyone who works here. I'm going to show you how to make a really simple focaccia with onions and rosemary. This is definitely not a scary recipe. Anyone can do this at home. The dough's just flour, salt, water, and yeast. You're taking white dust and adding to it just water, and out of it you get something which is alive, which grows and multiplies and breathes, and then you bake it and you get our staple food. You can see it's starting to come together into a ball, and it forms these long filaments when you stretch it.
Leave the dough to rise up in a warm place for a few hours, It'll double, possibly triple in size.
I'm going to oil the tray, so quite a generous amount of oil. And then we'll take our dough and start to spread it out. Spread quite a bit of oil on top of the dough, because that's what's going to make a focaccia really unctuous. I'm going to use my fingers to dimple it.
Top with soft onions, fresh rosemary and a sprinkle of salt. And let it prove for a few hours while you have a lie down.
At home, just turn your oven up to full whack. It'll take about 40 minutes.
When the onions and dough are crisped up and saying, "Eat me," leave to cool and prepare for the best focaccia ever.
That's really good. You can't beat fresh bread.